And perhaps we hope that wisdom can evolve, just as species do. That night in the residential quarters, the alarm came at the worst possible time. It was 3 days after Elder Thraxmore's observation visit, and the station had settled into a new routine. Every afternoon, the observation deck transformed into an interspecies playground. The young ones looked forward to it. The adults had mostly accepted it, even if some remained skeptical. Han Buell was in the middle of teaching a group of cubs a new sliding technique when the emergency sirens blared throughout the station. All personnel to emergency stations. Yunseo's voice came over the speakers. The station commander's tone was calm but urgent. Ice storm approaching. Severity 10. This is not a drill. Proceed to underground shelters immediately. What's severity 10? Asked one of the Zentarii cubs. Very bad, Daewon said, already moving. Everyone inside now. The cubs were rushed through the airlock and handed off to their waiting parents. The station transformed into organized chaos as everyone moved toward the reinforced shelter levels below the main facility. These storms were rare on Glacius 7 but deadly. Winds that could tear through metal. Temperatures that dropped to levels that would freeze even protected systems. Ice crystals moving fast enough to cut through standard hull plating. In the command center, Yunseo coordinated the evacuation. Her face was tense as she studied the displays. How long until it hits? Velrix asked, having rushed to the command center from the residential levels. 40 minutes, maybe less. It's moving faster than projected. Yunseo pulled up the storm tracking data. We'll be fine in the shelters. They're designed for this. But we need everyone accounted for. All personnel are reporting in, Daewon said from his station. Everyone except, wait. His face went pale. The external sensor array is showing a malfunction. Which one? Yunseo demanded. Array 7, the main atmospheric monitor. Daewon's fingers flew across his console. Without it, we can't track the storm properly once it hits. We won't know its duration or intensity while we're underground. We could be trapped in the shelters for days unnecessarily, or worse, emerge too early. Can it be reset remotely? No, it needs manual activation. Someone has to physically access the control panel. The command center went silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Someone would have to go outside, cross 200 meters of increasingly icy surface in rapidly dropping temperatures, with a deadly storm approaching. I'll go, Velrix said immediately. I am security chief. It is my duty. You'll die in the first 10 meters, Yunseo said bluntly. Your species has no experience with ice. You'd slip and slide off the platform before reaching the array. We need someone who can move on ice. Everyone looked at Han Buell. I can do it, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. No, Daewon objected. It's too dangerous. The temperature is already -90. The wind is picking up. Han Buell, you could die out there. But I'm the only one who knows how to move on ice in these conditions. I've practiced. I know how to fall safely, how to use momentum, how to maintain balance on slippery surfaces. She looked at Yunseo. You know I'm right. The commander studied her for a long moment. The thermal suit will give you maybe 20 minutes of protection. That's cutting it very close, a small voice interrupted them. I can help. Everyone turned to see Pip standing in the doorway. The young Thraxian had somehow escaped from the group being herded to the shelters. Pip, no, Velrix said firmly. Return to the shelter immediately. But I know ice now. I learned. I can move on it without falling. Pip looked at Han Buell. You taught me. We learned together. Absolutely not. Thraxmore's voice boomed as the elder entered the command center. I will not allow a juvenile to risk death for equipment. With respect, elder, Pip said, showing remarkable bravery. I am small. Lower to the ground. 4 legs instead of 2. Better balance. The human Han Buell taught me that my body is actually better for ice than hers. She said so during training. Han Buell winced. She had said that, trying to encourage Pip. She hadn't expected it to matter in a life-or-death situation. Bora, who had also arrived in the command center, spoke up. The child makes a valid point about body mechanics. And if Han Buell's strength fails in the cold, having a partner could mean survival. I cannot allow this, Velrix growled. Parent, Pip said quietly. I can do this. I want to help. That's what humans do, isn't it? They help even when it's dangerous, even when it's scary. That's what makes them strong. The adults looked at each other, a silent conversation happening in glances and expressions. Finally, Yunseo made the decision. We're running out of time. Hanbiel, Pip, you go together. Velrix, you'll accompany them on tether lines as backup. If either of them falters, you pull them back immediately. No arguments. Commander, I protest, Thraxmore began. Noted and overruled. We need that sensor array, and this is our best option. Everyone else to the shelters. Now. 5 minutes later, 3 figures stood in the airlock, suited in the heaviest thermal gear the station possessed. Hanbiel, Pip, and Velrix, connected by reinforced tether lines that would keep them from separating in the wind. Remember the training, Hanbiel said to Pip, her voice crackling through the comm system. Low center of gravity. Don't fight the ice, work with it. If you start to slide, control the slide. I remember, Pip replied. The young Thraxian sounded scared but determined. I will be right behind you both, Velrix said. If there is any danger, we know you'll pull us back, Hanbiel finished. We'll be fine. We're ice experts now, right, Pip? Right, Pip said, sounding slightly more confident. The airlock opened and the cold hit them like a physical blow. The temperature had dropped even in the last few minutes. Ice crystals were already forming in the air, creating a hazy, dangerous mist. The wind howled, not yet at storm strength but building rapidly. Hanbiel stepped out first, testing the surface. The deck was now completely covered in smooth ice, more treacherous than anything they'd practiced on. She took a careful step, then another, using all the techniques she'd learned over years of winter sports. Pip followed, moving with the cautious precision of a young predator. The cub's forelegs splayed slightly for better balance. Claws retracted to avoid catching on the ice. Velrix came last, moving awkwardly but kept stable by the tether. They made slow progress across the deck. 20 meters, 40 meters. The wind grew stronger, pushing at them, trying to knock them off balance. Hanbiel slipped once, controlled the slide, recovered. Pip imitated the movement perfectly, having watched Hanbiel practice this. Word spread through Cryo Station faster than anyone expected. By the next morning, 3 more Thraxian families had requested permission to bring their young to the observation deck. Then 2 families from the Zentari, a species of peaceful traders. Then even a Morphean scientist asked if her eggmate's offspring could participate. Hanbiel stood in the cafeteria, staring at the list on her tablet, slightly overwhelmed. 17 cubs, she said to Daewon. 17 different young aliens who want to learn about ice. You started something, Daewon replied, sipping his coffee. Apparently watching Pip slide around yesterday was the most entertainment this station has seen in months. The footage went through every department. We didn't mean to make it a spectacle. Too late now. You've accidentally created the first interspecies ice playground in this sector. He paused. Actually, maybe in any sector. I should document this for the xenopedagogy journals. Before Hanbiel could respond, a new arrival entered the cafeteria. This Thraxian was larger than Velrix, with darker scales marked by ritual scars that indicated high status. The translator badge identified them as Elder Thraxmore, a senior ambassador. The entire cafeteria went quiet. I seek the human called Hanbiel, Thraxmore announced. Voice deep and commanding. Hanbiel stood up slowly. That's me. The elder approached, and up close Hanbiel realized just how intimidating a high-ranking Thraxian could be. This was a being who had survived countless battles, who carried the authority of an entire culture. I have watched the recordings, Thraxmore said, of Thraxian young engaging in frivolous activities on frozen water. Activities taught by you. Hanbiel lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. Yes, Elder, I taught Pip how to slide on ice. This is not Thraxian behavior. Our young are trained for strength, for combat readiness, for survival. Not for play. With respect, Elder, play is survival. It teaches balance, spatial awareness, risk assessment, and resilience. Pip learned all those things yesterday. Pip learned to fall down, Thraxmore countered. To make oneself deliberately vulnerable. This goes against every principle of our people. Daewon stood up beside Hanbiel. The human wasn't trying to corrupt your culture, Elder. She was just sharing something that makes her species happy. Pip chose to participate. Choice, Thraxmore repeated the word like it was dangerous. Young ones do not have the wisdom to make proper choices. That is why we have elders, parents, teachers, to guide them towards strength. A new voice entered the conversation, and yet Pip demonstrated remarkable adaptability yesterday. Everyone turned to see Bora entering the cafeteria. The human child psychologist was older than Hanbiel, with gray streaking her dark hair and eyes that held quiet authority. Dr. Bora, Thraxmore acknowledged her with a slight nod. I know of your work. Then you know I've studied developmental behavior across 47 species over 30 years, Bora said calmly. And I can tell you that play behavior is not weakness. It's how young minds learn to navigate complex environments. Your own Thraxian cubs show play behaviors when they're very young, before cultural training suppresses it. That is different. That is instinctive behavior that must be overcome. Or perhaps it's instinctive behavior that should be encouraged. Bora pulled up data on her tablet. Studies show that young beings who engage in varied play demonstrate better problem-solving abilities, more creative thinking, and stronger stress resilience. The Thraxian Empire's rigid training protocols produce excellent warriors, but at what cost to overall cognitive flexibility? Thraxmore's forearms crossed, a clear sign of defensiveness. You suggest our methods are flawed. I suggest there might be room for both training and play. Strength and joy, discipline and discovery. Bora's voice remained calm but firm. The universe is changing, Elder. Species are mixing, cooperating, learning from each other. The ones who adapt thrive. The ones who refuse to adapt. She let the sentence hang. Thraxmore was silent for a long moment. Then the Elder spoke. I will observe this ice activity myself. If I determine it is harmful to Thraxian development, it will cease immediately. No human will teach our young again. That's fair, Hanbuel said quickly before anyone else could object. Come to the observation deck this afternoon. See for yourself. After Thraxmore left, Bora turned to Hanbuel. You realize you're now being tested by one of the most conservative members of the Thraxian High Council? I figured that out from the whole intimidating presence and cultural authority thing, Hanbuel replied. What do I do? Show them what you showed Pip. Don't try to make it more than it is. Just let the children play and let the results speak for themselves. Bora smiled slightly. And for what it's worth, I think what you're doing is important. Every species benefits from understanding joy. That afternoon, the observation deck was more crowded than it had ever been. Hanbuel and Daewon had expanded the ice slide and created a larger play area. Pip was already there with Velrix, practically vibrating with excitement. Beside them stood another young Thraxian, slightly smaller than Pip. This is Kesh, Velrix introduced, from another family. They wish their offspring to learn as well. Kesh watched everything with cautious, calculating eyes. Where Pip was enthusiastic, Kesh seemed suspicious, assessing threats the way young predators are trained to do. Elder Thraxmore arrived with an entourage of observers. The Elder's presence changed the atmosphere immediately, making everything feel formal and judged. Begin, Thraxmore commanded. Hanbuel took a breath and looked at Pip and Kesh. Okay, who wants to go first? Me! Pip rushed forward, already moving toward the ice with the confidence of yesterday's experience. Kesh held back, watching. For the next 20 minutes, Hanbuel guided Pip through sliding exercises while Kesh observed from the safety of the dry deck. Pip demonstrated everything learned from before, adding new techniques and showing remarkable improvement. The young Thraxian slid down the slope, practiced controlled falls, even experimented with spinning. Through it all, Elder Thraxmore watched with an unreadable expression. Finally, Kesh crept closer. Is it truly safe? The cautious cub asked. Safe enough, Hanbuel replied. Want to try? Thraxians do not try. We succeed or we learn from failure. Then think of this as learning. Hanbuel smiled. Come on, Pip can show you. The interaction between the two cubs was fascinating to watch. Pip, the enthusiastic explorer, and Kesh, the careful strategist. Together they ventured onto the ice. Kesh fell almost immediately, but seeing Pip's joyful reaction to falling, didn't panic. Instead, the cautious cub analyzed the fall, understood the mechanics, and tried again. Within an hour, both cubs were sliding together, racing down the slope, creating games that mixed hunting instincts with play. They would stalk each other across the ice, losing traction and sliding, turning pursuit into a slippery chase that ended in tumbles and those strange chirping laughs. Other young aliens joined, tentatively at first. The Zentari cubs, with their 6 legs, found sliding challenging but amusing. The Morphean offspring, being more gelatinous, actually absorbed the impact of falls better than anyone. The observation deck transformed into something unprecedented, a place where young beings from different worlds, with different biologies and different cultures, played together. They learned from each other's failures, celebrated each other's successes, and created something new that belonged to no single species. Day-Wan was recording everything, and Bora watched with obvious professional interest. But Hanbyul just participated, helping when needed, encouraging when helpful, and mostly staying back to let the young ones discover ice on their own terms. Elder Thraxmore observed it all in silence. As the session ended and the young ones were collected by their parents, each one tired but happy, Thraxmore approached Hanbyul. "You have created something here," the elder said slowly. "Something I did not expect. Just some kids sliding on ice, Elder. No, you have created cooperation between species at the youngest level. You have shown that our children can learn from each other without losing their own identities." Thraxmore paused. "But you have also encouraged vulnerability, made them comfortable with falling. This concerns me." "Falling teaches them to get back up," Hanbyul said. "That's resilience, isn't it?" Before Thraxmore could respond, Pip approached, with Kesh close behind. "Elder," Pip said respectfully, "today I learned that ice changes how we move. That friction matters. That weight distribution affects balance. That momentum can be controlled or released. I learned physics through experience," Kesh added. "And I learned that falling is data. Each fall teaches what doesn't work. Humans call this fun, but it is actually accelerated learning through repeated safe failure." Thraxmore looked at both cubs, then at Hanbyul. "You taught them this in one afternoon?" "They taught themselves," Hanbyul replied. "I just provided the ice." The elder was quiet for a long moment. Then Thraxmore made a gesture that Velrix explained later meant deep consideration. "I will think on what I have seen today," the elder finally said, "but I make no promises." As Thraxmore left with the entourage, Velrix approached Hanbyul. "The elder is reconsidering long-held beliefs," the security chief said quietly. "This is significant. Thraxmore does not reconsider easily." "What happens now?" Hanbyul asked. "Now we wait." 3 days passed before Velrix made the decision. It happened early in the morning cycle when most of the station was still quiet. The security chief found Hanbyul in the cafeteria, eating breakfast and reviewing xenobiology reports on her tablet. "Human Hanbyul," Velrix said formally, all forearms held in a gesture of respect. Hanbyul looked up, surprised to see the imposing Thraxian seeking her out. "Good morning, Velrix. Is everything okay? I wish to discuss your offer." "About teaching Pip to experience ice." Hanbyul's eyes widened. She set down her fork carefully. "Really? You're considering it?" "I am doing more than considering. I am agreeing to it." Velrix sat down across from her, the chair creaking under the alien's weight. "But there are conditions. You must ensure Pip's safety at all times. The cold exposure will be brief, and I will be present to observe, of course." "Yes, absolutely. We'll be careful." Hanbyul was practically bouncing in her seat with excitement. "When can we start?" "This afternoon, during Pip's free period. I will bring proper thermal clothing." Velrix paused. "I must ask you something. Why is this important to you?" "Pip is not your offspring. Teaching my child provides you no advantage." Hanbyul thought about this for a moment. "Because I remember what it was like to be young and curious about the world. And I remember the adults who took time to show me new things, who let me explore safely. They made my life richer. I want to give that to Pip." "Humans do many things that provide no survival advantage," Velrix observed. "Maybe kindness is its own survival advantage. Maybe that's how we've made so many friends across the galaxy." Hanbyul smiled. "Besides, I have a feeling Pip is going to love this. And seeing someone experience joy for the first time, that's a gift too. For me, I mean." Velrix stood up. "I will bring Pip to the observation deck at the 13th hour. Please be prepared." After the Thraxian left, Hanbyul immediately pulled out her communicator and called Day-Wan. "I need your help building something," she said as soon as he answered. "Why do I already regret asking what?" Day-Wan's voice crackled through the speaker. "A slide. A small ice slide. For Pip." There was a long silence. "You're serious. Completely serious." "Velrix is letting Pip try the ice this afternoon, and I want to make it special."
"Can you help me?"
Another pause. "You know what? Sure, why not? It's not like I had anything normal planned today anyway." By the 13th hour, everything was ready. Hanbyul and Day-Wan had created a gentle slope on the observation deck using packed snow and carefully shaped ice. It wasn't very big, maybe 3 meters long and half a meter high, but it was smooth and safe. They'd also set up padding at the bottom, just in case. Belrix arrived precisely on time, with Pip walking beside the adult. The young Thraxian was wearing a thermal suit specially made for smaller frames, and looked both excited and nervous. "I prepared for every safety concern," Belrix announced, holding up a medical kit. "If Pip shows any sign of distress, we stop immediately." "Agreed," Hanbuel said. "Ready, Pip?" The young Thraxian nodded quickly. They went through the airlock together, all four of them. The cold hit them immediately, though the thermal suits kept the worst at bay. Pip's eyes went wide, experiencing real cold for the first time. "It bites," Pip said, surprised. "That's a good way to describe it," Hanbuel agreed. "But your suit will keep you safe. Come on, let's walk to the ice." She led Pip slowly to the icy section of the deck. The young Thraxian hesitated at the edge where the metal turned to ice. "It looks hard," Pip observed. "It is hard. And slippery. Watch." Hanbuel stepped onto the ice and immediately slipped a little, catching herself with a laugh. "See, your feet don't grip like normal. It takes practice. Or what if I fall?" "Then you fall. And then you get back up. That's the whole point." Hanbuel held out her hand. "I'll help you for the first try." Pip looked back at Velrix, who gave a slow nod of encouragement despite the tension visible in the adult's posture. The young Thraxian reached out with one small clawed hand and gripped Hanbuel's gloved fingers. Together, they stepped onto the ice. Pip's first reaction was immediate and instinctive. All four legs splayed out as the clawed feet found no purchase on the smooth surface. The young Thraxian wobbled dramatically, making a chirping sound of alarm. "I've got you," Hanbuel said calmly. "Don't fight it. Just feel how different it is." Slowly, carefully, Pip relaxed. The young Thraxian experimented with weight distribution, lifting one foot at a time, discovering how the ice responded to movement. "It's strange," Pip said. "Everything slides. That's the magic of it. Now watch this." Hanbuel let go of Pip's hand and demonstrated a small slide, pushing off with one foot and gliding about a meter before stopping. "Your turn." "I can't do that. You won't know until you try." "And if you fall, so what? I fall all the time. Watch." Hanbuel deliberately let herself slip and fall onto her padded backside, sliding a short distance before laughing. "See, falling is part of the fun." Pip stared at her. Then, with the determination that seemed to be a Thraxian trait, the young alien tried to copy the movement. One push with a back leg, a moment of sliding. Then all four legs tangled together and Pip tumbled forward, snout first into the ice. Belrix took a step forward, but Hanbuel held up a hand. Watching, Pip lay there for a moment, sprawled on the ice. Then the young Thraxian started to slide, the momentum carrying the small body forward, legs still tangled across the smooth surface. Pip slid almost 2 meters before friction finally stopped the movement. Silence filled the observation deck. Then Pip made a sound no adult Thraxian had ever heard from one of their young. A chirping, trilling noise that was unmistakably joy. "Again," Pip demanded, scrambling back to standing. "I want to do that again." "You want to fall again?" Velrix asked, confused. "I want to slide again." Pip was already trying to recreate the fall, deliberately throwing weight forward, tumbling, sliding across the ice with that same delighted trill. Hanbuel caught Daewon's eye and grinned. Daewon shook his head but was smiling too. For the next hour, they taught Pip the basics. How to balance on ice, how to push off and glide, how to fall safely and turn it into a slide. The young Thraxian was a quick learner, as predator species often are, but what amazed both humans was the pure joy Pip displayed with every successful slide. "Okay, now for the special part," Hanbuel said. "See that little hill we made? You can slide down it." Pip's eyes went even wider. "Down from up high?" "Exactly. It's the best part. Watch me first." Hanbuel climbed the small slope and positioned herself at the top, sitting down. Then she pushed off and slid down the gentle incline, laughing the whole way. When she reached the bottom, she spread her arms wide. "Your turn." Pip approached the slope cautiously. Velrix watched with all four arms tense, ready to intervene. But the young Thraxian climbed up, copying Hanbuel's movements, and sat at the top. "Just push off?" Pip asked. "Just push off and enjoy the ride." Pip pushed. The young Thraxian slid down the slope, picking up speed, the world rushing past in a blur of white and blue. At the bottom, Pip tumbled into the padding with another one of those joyful trills. "Again," Pip shouted, already scrambling back toward the slope. And again Pip went. And again. And again. Each time, the young Thraxian grew more confident, more skilled, and more joyful. Pip experimented with different positions, different speeds, different ways of sliding. The young predator's natural learning abilities, usually reserved for hunting techniques, were now focused entirely on mastering this new skill of ice sliding. Velrix watched it all with an expression that was hard for the humans to read. But when Pip slid down the slope belly first, all four limbs spread out, making sounds of pure happiness. Something in the adult Thraxian's posture softened. "I have never seen Pip like this," Velrix said quietly to Han Buell, "so freely joyful. We Thraxians are taught to control emotion, to channel everything into purpose and strength. But this is strength too," Han Buell said. "The strength to be vulnerable, to try new things, to find happiness in unexpected places. Perhaps," Velrix admitted, "perhaps humans understand something we have forgotten in our focus on survival." "What's that?" "That survival alone is not enough. That life should be more than mere existence." Han Buell nodded. "Now you're getting it." They watched Pip slide down once more, and this time, even Velrix made a sound that might have been the Thraxian equivalent of laughter. The universe was vast and often cruel, but in this moment on a frozen moon far from any homeworld, two species found common ground in the simple joy of a child sliding on ice. And for both humans and Thraxians present, something fundamental shifted in how they understood each other. Play was not weakness. Joy was not frivolous. And sometimes the best lessons in life came not from training or discipline, but from falling down and laughing about it. The next morning, Han Buell returned to the observation deck with proper ice cleats attached to her boots. She had promised Daewon she would be more careful, though the grin on her face suggested her definition of careful might not match his. What she didn't expect was to find Pip already there, tiny nose pressed against the glass of the interior window, staring out at the frozen deck with unwavering focus. "Hey there, little one," Han Buell said softly, not wanting to startle the cub. "What are you looking at?" Pip didn't turn around. "The ice place, where you fell and made happy sounds." Han Buell crouched down beside the young Thraxian. "I wasn't just falling, I was sliding. There's a difference." "What is sliding?" "It's when you move across a smooth surface without walking. The ice makes everything slippery so you can glide." Han Buell demonstrated with her hand, making a swooshing motion through the air. "It feels like flying, but on the ground." Pip finally looked at her, those large yellow eyes blinking slowly. "Thraxians do not fly, we are hunters. We stay on the ground where prey cannot escape." "But don't you ever want to try something different? Something that's not about hunting?" The young alien tilted its head in that peculiar way that suggested deep thought. "Parent Velrix says I must learn to be strong, to be a good hunter. Playing is for weak species." Han Buell felt a pang of sadness at those words. "That's not true at all. Playing makes you stronger in different ways. It teaches you how to move, how to think fast, how to solve problems. And it makes you happy. Being happy is important too." "Important for what?" "For living." Han Buell smiled. "What's the point of being the strongest hunter if you're never happy?" Before Pip could respond, the airlock door opened and Velrix emerged. From the corridor, all four arms carrying equipment containers, the adult Thraxian stopped when seeing them together. "Pip, you should not bother the human." "Pip isn't bothering me at all," Han Buell said quickly. "We're just talking about ice." Velrix made a rumbling sound that the translator didn't quite capture. "The human continues to think about frozen water. This obsession is strange. It's not an obsession, it's enthusiasm." Han Buell stood up. "Actually, Velrix, I wanted to ask you something. Has Pip ever experienced anything cold before? Our homeworld is warm. Deserts cover most of the land. Cold is unknown to us except in artificial environments." Velrix set down the containers. "Why do you ask?" "Because experiencing new things is good for young minds. Any young minds." Han Buell gestured toward the observation deck. "What if Pip tried the ice just for a moment? I could supervise." "Absolutely not." Velrix's response was immediate and firm. "The cold could harm a juvenile. The ice is dangerous. You yourself fell yesterday." "I fell because it was fun, and I got right back up." "That's the point." Han Buell crossed her arms. Look, I understand you want to protect Pip, that's good parenting. But sometimes young ones need to explore safely. That's how they learn. Humans learn through reckless behavior. Thraxians learn through discipline and training. And which method has worked better for you? Honestly? Hanbuel challenged. Humans made it to space. We explore everywhere. We adapt to any environment. Maybe our reckless behavior is actually a strength. Velrix growled, but there was less certainty in it than before. I will consider your words, but Pip will not go on the ice today. Tomorrow? Hanbuel asked hopefully. Perhaps never. I must ensure my offspring's safety above all else. Pip, who had been listening to this entire exchange, made a small sound that drew both adults' attention. The young Thraxian was still staring at the ice deck, small clawed hands pressed against the window. I want to try, Pip said quietly. No, Velrix replied. But the human tried. The human fell and became happy. I want to understand why. There is nothing to understand. Humans are irrational. Hanbuel bit back a laugh. We're not irrational. We just value different things. For us, joy is just as important as safety, sometimes more important. She turned to Pip. Tell you what, little one, if your parent ever says yes, I promise I'll teach you everything I know about ice. We'll go slow, we'll be careful, and we'll have fun. Fun, Pip repeated, testing the word. Like the happy sounds you made? Exactly like that. Velrix picked up the equipment containers again, clearly wanting to end this conversation. Come, Pip, we have training exercises. But now. Reluctantly, the young Thraxian followed its parent down the corridor. But Pip kept looking back at Hanbuel and at the ice beyond the window until they disappeared around a corner. Hanbuel stood there for a moment, then suited up and went outside. The ice called to her like an old friend. She spent the next hour practicing slides and spins, laughing each time she fell, perfecting her technique. She didn't notice the security camera above the airlock, or that Velrix was watching the footage from the security office, studying every movement the human made. And Velrix certainly didn't notice Pip, who had snuck away from training exercises and was also watching. Tiny face pressed against a monitor screen, memorizing every slide, every fall, every moment of joy. That evening, during the station's rest cycle, something unprecedented happened. Pip snuck out of the quarters shared with Velrix. The young Thraxian had never done this before. Disobedience was not part of their culture, but something had awakened in Pip's mind, something that wouldn't stay quiet no matter how hard the cub tried to ignore it. Curiosity. The corridors were dimly lit during rest cycle. Pip moved on silent feet, the way young predators are naturally gifted to move, until reaching the observation deck area. The door to the deck itself was locked for safety, but Pip could still see through the window. The ice gleamed under the moon's starlight, beautiful and smooth and impossibly inviting. You shouldn't be here. Pip spun around, startled. Hanbuel stood in the corridor, wearing casual clothes and holding a warm drink. She didn't look angry, just curious. I wanted to see, Pip admitted. Hanbuel walked over and sat down on the floor, her back against the wall. After a moment, Pip joined her, and together they looked out at the frozen deck. It calls to you, doesn't it? Hanbuel said softly. The ice. I don't understand why. Parent Velrix says it is just frozen water. It should not matter. But it does matter, because it represents something new, something you've never experienced. Hanbuel took a sip of her drink. When I was younger than you probably, I lived in a place where ice was everywhere in winter. My parents would take me to frozen lakes and I learned to slide before I could properly walk. Those memories are some of my happiest. Happy, Pip said. You use that word often. Because it's important. Life is hard, Pip. The universe is big and cold and full of dangers. But if you can find moments of happiness, moments of pure joy, then all the hard parts become bearable. She looked down at the young Thraxian. Your people are strong, powerful, but are they happy? Pip thought about this for a long time. I don't know. We don't talk about happy. We talk about strong, about successful hunts, about honor. Those things matter too. But they're not everything. Han Buell finished her drink. Come on, little one. Let's get you back before Velrix wakes up and panics. She walked Pip back to the residential corridor, and they parted ways with a small wave. But neither of them saw Velrix, who had been searching for Pip and had heard the entire conversation from around a corner. The adult Thraxian stood in the darkness for a long time, thinking about happiness, about strength, about what it meant to be a good parent, and thinking about the human who fell on ice and laughed, who treated the universe like it was meant to be enjoyed rather than merely survived. In the security chief's mind, something was beginning to shift, something that questioned everything. Velrix had been taught about the soft, prey-like humans who somehow conquered the stars not through strength or claws or natural weapons, but through something else entirely, through joy, through curiosity, through the simple act of sliding on ice and finding it wonderful. Perhaps, Velrix thought, humans were not irrational after all. Perhaps they were the most rational species in the galaxy, having figured out the one truth that predators had forgotten in their focus on survival. That life was meant to be lived, not just survived. Han Buell pressed her gloved hands against the observation window and grinned like a child seeing snow for the first time. Outside, the surface of Glacius 7 stretched endlessly, a frozen wasteland that sparkled under the distant sun. Ice formations jutted from the ground like crystal towers, and the entire moon glowed with an otherworldly blue light. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Daewon looked up from his datapad and shook his head. "It's negative 70 degrees out there. Beautiful isn't the word I'd use." Han Buell turned to face her colleague, her eyes bright with excitement. "But look at it, real ice. Do you know how long it's been since I've seen actual ice? The station on Kepler 442 only had synthetic cooling systems. This is natural." "You're acting like ice is some kind of miracle," Daewon muttered, returning his attention to the equipment readings. "It's just frozen water." "Just frozen water?" Han Buell gasped dramatically. "You have no sense of wonder, Daewon." "None at all." Before he could respond, a deep rumbling sound echoed through the corridor. Both humans turned to see a massive figure approaching. Velrix, the station's security chief, had to duck slightly to fit through the doorway. The Thraxian stood nearly 8 feet tall with dark green scales that caught the light, 4 muscular arms and eyes that glowed with a predatory yellow shine. Behind Velrix, a much smaller figure scurried along, trying to keep pace. "The humans are observing the frozen surface again," Velrix said, the translator device on the alien's chest converting the growling sounds into standard language. "I do not understand this fascination." The small figure behind Velrix peeked around the adult's leg. Pip was barely 3 feet tall, with lighter green scales and oversized eyes that watched everything with intense curiosity. The young Thraxian tilted its head, studying Han Buell with the kind of focus a cat might give to a particularly interesting insect. "Hello, Pip." Han Buell dropped to one knee, bringing herself closer to the cub's eye level. "Want to see something amazing?" Velrix made a warning sound, but Pip had already crept forward, tiny clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. "Han Buell, maybe don't," Daewon started to say, but she was already leading Pip toward the observation window. "See that?" Han Buell pointed outside. "That's ice. It's what happens when water gets very, very cold. On my home planet, we have a season called winter where ice covers everything. Lakes freeze over and snow falls from the sky." Pip's eyes widened. "Water becomes solid?" "Yes, and you can walk on it, slide on it, play on it. It's wonderful." "Play?" Velrix moved closer, all 4 arms crossed in a gesture that somehow conveyed both suspicion and disapproval. "There is no purpose in play. Thraxian young train for survival. We do not waste time with purposeless activities." Han Buell stood up, undeterred by the intimidating alien looming over her. "Play isn't purposeless. It's how humans learn. It's how we stay happy. Don't your people ever do things just because they're fun?" "Fun?" Velrix repeated the word like it tasted strange. "Humans are soft creatures. You seek pleasure in everything. This is why your species should have been prey, yet somehow you travel the stars. It makes no sense." "Maybe that's exactly why we travel the stars," Han Buell said with a smile. "Because we find joy in things that scare other species." Daewon sighed loudly. "Please don't encourage her philosophical debates, Velrix. She'll talk for hours." But Han Buell was already moving toward the airlock access. "I'm going outside." "What?" Day One's head snapped up. Han Buell, you just got here. You haven't even completed the safety orientation for external environments. The orientation said the observation deck is safe for brief exposure, as long as we're suited up. I checked. She was already pulling on the thermal outer layer. I just want to step out for a minute. Touch real ice. Feel what it's like. This is foolish, Velric stated. The environment is hostile. The environment is cold. There's a difference. Han Buell sealed her suit and checked the heating elements. Besides, humans come from a planet with lots of hostile environments. We're pretty good at surviving them. Pip tugged on Velrix's lower arm. Can I watch? The adult Thraxian hesitated, then gave a slow nod. From inside only. The cold would harm you quickly. Han Buell stepped into the airlock, gave them a cheerful wave, and hit the external door control. The door slid open and a blast of frigid air rushed in, making even the suited human stagger slightly. Then she stepped out onto the observation deck. The deck was a reinforced platform extending from the station, surrounded by safety rails. The surface was covered in a thin layer of ice that had formed from the moon's atmosphere, condensing on the cold metal. Han Buell took a careful step forward, then another. Her boots made crunching sounds on the frost. It's perfect, she breathed, her voice coming through the comm system. Inside, Velrix, Pip, and Daywan watched through the window. Han Buell spread her arms wide and looked up at the strange sky, where the massive gas giant the moon orbited hung like a multicolored jewel. She took another step, her attention focused on the view rather than her feet. That was when it happened. Her boot hit a particularly smooth patch of ice. Her foot slid forward. Her other foot slipped backward. Her arms windmilled frantically as she tried to catch her balance. For a moment she hung suspended in an awkward pose, fighting gravity itself. Then she fell. Han Buell landed hard on her back with an audible thump that the comm system picked up clearly, but instead of stopping, she kept moving. The momentum and the slick ice sent her sliding across the deck like a hockey puck. Arms and legs sprawled out. She slid at least 3 meters before finally coming to a stop near the far railing. Han Buell, Day One, rushed to the airlock controls. Velrix made a concerned growling sound, one hand reaching instinctively toward the window as if to help. Pip pressed closer to the glass, watching with intense focus. There was a moment of silence. Then from the comm system came a sound that made everyone freeze. Laughter. Han Buell was laughing. Not the nervous laugh of someone trying to hide fear or pain, but genuine, delighted laughter. She lay on her back on the ice, arms still spread wide, laughing so hard her whole body shook. That was amazing, she gasped between laughs. Did you see how far I slid? Day One stopped at the airlock, his hand hovering over the controls. You're not hurt? Hurt? I'm having the time of my life. Han Buell pushed herself up into a sitting position, still grinning. The ice is so smooth here. It's like glass. Velrix stared at the human in complete confusion. She fell. She lost her balance and fell in a vulnerable position. This is dangerous. Why does she express joy? Because she's Han Buell, Day One said with resignation. And because humans are weird. But Pip wasn't listening to either of them. The young Thraxian was completely focused on Han Buell, who had now discovered that she could push herself backward across the ice using her hands, creating a makeshift sliding motion. Each time she moved, she giggled. Why? Pip asked quietly. Why does the human enjoy falling? Velrix had no answer. Outside, Han Buell finally stood up carefully this time and made her way back to the airlock. When she came inside, her face was flushed with cold and happiness. That was incredible, she announced. Pip, you have to try it someday. Try falling? The young Thraxian's voice held genuine confusion. Try sliding on ice. It's one of the best things humans ever discovered. Han Buell began removing her outer suit layers. Where I grew up, children would spend entire days sliding on frozen ponds. We'd laugh and fall and slide until we couldn't feel our fingers or toes. Those were the best days. Velrix made a sound of disapproval. Humans intentionally make themselves vulnerable for entertainment. This explains much about your species. But Pip continued to stare out at the icy deck, something new flickering in those large, predatory eyes, something that looked almost like curiosity. And perhaps, just perhaps, something that looked like longing.